I want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and her network on Zingo TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both Zingo TV app on the respective app stores and on iOS and Android devices. While you download, please make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire Sticks, Roku Sticks, and on all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Today, I have another amazing guest. And this person is been one of my friends for many years. We've actually started out in the personal development a few years ago. Well, I say it's a few years. I only feel like it's a few years, but many years ago. And we were on this track of leadership, of learning how to grow through our own stuff and then help other people grow through it. And my guest today is Ronny Leber. Ronny, welcome to Redefine Parenting and taking time to be here on your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vino. Thank you for having me. And it's been more than a decade, actually, when I think about it, that we have been in the same field, and it's been quite a journey. And thank you for having me and for another step in our journey today.
I love it. I love it. And the reason why I brought Ronny on our show today is because him and I were having a very candid discussion a few months ago about, the way kids make mistakes and how as parents, are we scrutinizing those mistakes and making them feel bad for them? Or are we using those as learning opportunities? And even that, we started talking about even another topic called magic moments, of finding the magic moments in our kids' lives. And so, Ronny, when we were talking about the mistakes, maybe you can help the audience understand, in your journey in your life, where have there been mistakes where you felt scrutinized for them, maybe as a child growing up, or, when you're teaching other kids, maybe in sports or whatever, and you realize later on that those mistakes were actually the reward?
Well, that's a great question, Bino. And actually, I just found this in the last years, because what I realized was that many, even adults, actually have a lot of stuff going on about not making mistakes. And then when you dig a bit deeper, oftentimes it comes from your childhood, because of who you had to be for your parents, for your mom, for your dad, and that you were not allowed to make mistakes, because maybe then if you made mistakes, you were not being loved in the worst case, and that you didn't feel that. And then later on, also, you bring this to your own relationships, and also, of course, then to your own kids. And that's something that oftentimes we're not even aware of. And where I really discovered that was, and maybe you were in there, back in 2020, before the pandemic, actually, I was at a seminar and Sarah Blakely was on. Sarah Blakely, for those of you who do not know who that is, she's the founder of Spanx. And for those of you who know what Spanx is, you're probably a man, because I had no idea what Spanx is. And Spanx are those, I don't know how.
I know what Spanx are. I know what Spanx are. Yep. For us women, they are our best friends when we're wearing nice outfits, dresses. They kind of keep everything in, and they keep our figure looking very nice.
Okay, beautiful. I couldn't have described it more beautiful, because I would have probably used something that probably would have offended someone without wanting to do that. So just saying. And so basically, yeah, and what she was saying, because she founded Spanx about, well, I think in the year 2000, pretty much, more or less. And with $5,000, and now it's still a privately owned company with more than $1 billion worth of value. And she said, or what she contributed that to her success was a lot when she grew up. When she came home after school, or when she came home from a field trip or whatever, her dad always asked her when they had dinner, "What mistakes did you make today? What did you fail at today?" And that's a very different perspective than most of us actually get asked, because most of us like, okay, what are the grades? How did you do? We're even trained. Like, I mean, I don't know how it is well, I do know how it is in the US. You usually get percentages. Here it's like, okay, you have like, it was so and so many points, and you had so and so many mistakes in there. And basically, you always value your effort by mistakes. It's like, oh, I had those and those mistakes. It's never like, oh, you made so and so many things right. And basically, the point is, you need to embrace your mistakes, because it's okay to make mistakes. It's human to make mistakes. It's normal to do that. And I mean, really, I love making mistakes. And don't get me wrong, it's not about making the same mistake over and over and over again. But the point is, how do you deal with mistakes? Especially nowadays with kids and so on. I mean, you get bullied for everything. You
Yeah.
get bullied for, and in times of social media with TikTok, Instagram, and so on. I mean, oof, it's not really easy today to grow up for a kid. And I think the more we can teach them their self-worth, and that their self-worth is not determined on them making a mistake or not, because that's not it. That does not define who you are as a person, as a human being.
Right.
And when we can teach this to our kids, to the next generation, I think that's one of the greatest gifts that you can give to them.
Absolutely. And so it's interesting that when you're talking, I'm thinking, I have so many things in my head. And one of the biggest things that come to me is the fact that through our society, we are raised to fear our mistakes. We're raised to feel like we can't make mistakes. That's why I think it was brilliant that, Sarah's dad would ask her that, because, you know, when I got into this personal growth journey, decades ago, as you so kindly pointed out, it was fail forward. And what it fail forward mean is like to take the mistakes that you made and see the gift in it. And even now, I tell my kids, without mistakes, we would not grow, because I don't want my kids to fear the mistakes they make. I want them to acknowledge and take ownership, because sometimes the mistakes that we make in our lives are not mistakes at all. They're exactly what needed to happen in that moment. And we may not even realize it till a year or 2 years later. It's when someone gets arrested for a DUI, right? They're drinking and driving, they're arrested. And then all of a sudden they get sober. They never drink again. It was a costly mistake they made, but yet if they didn't make that mistake, where would their life be now? So even in that moment, that mistake became a gift for that person. They got healthy. They stopped drinking. They got sober. It changed the whole trajectory of their life because of that one night, that one decision that they made. And thank God they didn't hurt anybody or themselves. And all they could do is sit and think like, oh gosh, I screwed up. And they spend so much time in staying in the problem of the mistake instead of saying, what next do I need to do? But when they're guided into, okay, you made this decision. What decision do you need to make in the future? And how will that change you? And then they make that decision into, I can't drink anymore. I made the decision, I can't drink anymore. And it changes everything in their life. How could we as parents now do the same thing with what's going on with our kids? How do we open up that communication to allow our kids to say, hey, I screwed up today. This is what I did, and own it, to not be afraid to take ownership of what we as adults would say is a mistake. And then our kids, like I always say, it would get us as parents to be more curious, not critical. And it would allow our kids to have a more opening for them to be able to feel safe, seen, and heard without judgment. And then we can guide them into, a better decision and finding the gift in the mistake. And I think that's exactly what you were leading to when Sarah's dad would ask her that. It wasn't just about, criticizing and crucifying her for the mistakes that she would make.
Absolutely. And I'm in the entertainment industry, and my mistakes, usually the moment I make them, they are public. So basically it's, what choice do I have?
Right.
It's like, you got to own it. And really, if you're in front of thousands of people and suddenly, well, I mean, your pants rip, or you're in the ice skating rink, and you are just talking to the audience, and suddenly you see your feet at the height of your eyes, and then you're basically a second later on your butt, and your butt is wet, and and you can basically hear the mumbling in the crowd and so on. What choice do you have in taking it with humor? Or if you like, just, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, we all make mistakes, and really don't. Oftentimes I hear people say, "Oh my God, that's embarrassing. Oh my God, that's embarrassing."
Yes.
What is embarrassing? I think this is because I do not have that. I don't feel embarrassed. I hardly feel embarrassed about anything, really, because so what? I mean, what's the thing? So, and it's really quite. And that doesn't mean I do those things on purpose, but if they happen, they happen, and it's okay and it's normal. And as you were saying, seeing the opportunity in it. You know what this is?
Sticky notes.
Exactly. Sticky notes. You take it, you stick it, you take it, you stick it, and so on. You take it, you stick it somewhere. Those were one of the biggest mistakes in business history that came out as one of the biggest successes, because they
Wow.
were actually not looking to make sticky notes. They were looking to make super glue, like glue that really sticks very hard instantly. Does a sticky note stick very hard? Not really. But they actually found a way to make, like, to turn a weakness into a strength. And I think in
Yes.
every mistake that you make, it's all about taking the negative and turning it into a positive. And that's, you got to look for the opportunities in it. You got to look for what's great in that, what's great in this, or what am I learning through this. I'm not saying make the same mistake every day over and over again. That's not the point of this conversation. The point is embrace it, learn from it, grow from it, and move on.
Yes, yes. So let's move into like parenting. So, we both grew up in a generation where, you know, again, we didn't want to make mistakes. We wanted our parents' love. We wanted them to be proud of us. And there was this story that I know I'm not the only person who told myself, is that I can't make mistakes if I want my mom to be proud of me, or if I want my dad to be proud of me. I have to do it the right way. Doing the right way means that you don't make mistakes. And a lot of kids lie, and this is why kids lie, by the way. It's they need to cover up for something because they don't want to get in trouble for the choice that they made, which may have been a good choice.
May I cut in there also why they lie? Because I believe it's about, we are so, and kids even more, are so much shaped by the identity that our peer group puts on us.
Yes.
The expectations from our peer groups, maybe our parents, maybe our friends. And when a kid who does not have the same personality as an adult feels that that by making a mistake, that this would change the perception that the other person would have on them,
Mhm.
and they do not want this to happen, and that is the reason why they lie, because they want to stay, like, they want to still receive the same amount of love from that person, and that's the ultimate reason behind it.
Right. Right. And so if we could change that as parents, if we can be able to give our kids that space to say, you know what, this is where I screwed up. And for us as the parents to say, you know, really, is it really a screw up? What if their screw up is really the sticky paper, right? What if it's really the sticky note? What if their screw up is really going to create something new in their life or fresh in their life that they didn't even expect because it was an expectation that wasn't met in that moment? And something else was created in that moment instead. And I loved what you said, is their weaknesses and their strength. And actually, in my 6-week program that I have, Crack the Code to Parenting, it's a 6-week video program I put together. You can find it on my website. It's one of the weeks of that is all about how do you love your kids' weakness into their strength. It's finding that weakness that our kids have. Maybe they're not great at using their voice. Maybe they're not great at advocating. Maybe they're not great at manners or whatever it is. Find something they are great at and help them incorporate it into that. Love their weakness into their strength instead of just seeing their weaknesses. Because that's what we tend to do. We tend to see everything that's going wrong, all the mistakes we're making in our lives, I had a client that said that she didn't get all A's. She got like, I think she said she got like, 3 A's and 4 B's or 3 B's or something like that. And she was devastated. And here where I live, like B's are good. B's are really, really good. Of course, A's the best. But she never focused on celebrating the A's that she got. She was so worried about the B's that she got that it took away the excitement of, of what she did do right in her eyes. And that is like exactly where our kids are at today. They're so busy on trying to fix what they didn't do right, the mistakes that they made, that they're not even seeing the greatness that they've already created. It's like what you were saying, like you and I were talking about those magic moments. We're like screening over the magic moments and always focusing on what needs to be fixed, what needs to be fixed.
I would like to actually, I would like to make something very clear here, because making a mistake or being okay with making mistakes does not equal lowering your standards.
Yes.
Because if you believe, well, but my standards are very high, and so that's the reason, it's okay to have the highest standards that you can possibly have for yourself and still be okay with making mistakes. Because just because your standards are very high does not mean that you need to beat yourself up all the time for making a mistake. Because is this going to make it better? Is this going to make it go away? It's not.
Right.
So it's really about, all right, what does it mean? What can I learn from this? How can I move on? And one thing also that you were saying before, I had to think about my hairdresser. My hairdresser, he quit school when he was 14 years old, and then he went to apprenticeship to become a hairdresser. And he always believed that he was stupid because he couldn't remember things in school. And just before he finished his apprenticeship as a hairdresser, he discovered that his way of learning was to always write everything down and say it out loud. And through this, he could learn a lot better. It was just that he did not, before that, he has not found his methodology of learning. So he did not know how to learn. And that does not mean that you're stupid. It's just whether you're visual, you're auditory, you're kinesthetic, it's all about figuring out what learning type are you, or what learning type is your kid, and how can you best support your kid in her way of growing.
Right. So sometimes, like even what I'm hearing you say also is we could help guide our kids so they don't keep remaking the mistakes by just taking that moment to find out what type of learner they are. What was the cause of the mistake? It's like, if we don't get to the cause, we're going to keep making the same mistakes, and they're going to show up and they're going to manifest in different ways. So it's really about recognizing. And that's one of the things I just heard what you were saying is like recognize, like he needed to recognize that just wasn't the way that he was going to learn. It didn't mean that he was stupid. It just meant that he had to figure out a different way to learn so the mistakes would not continue.
And it can be quite difficult also for parents who actually have siblings, like who
Yes.
have who have several kids, and not to put everybody, well, because with him it worked, and now what about him or her? Like it's really taking each kid as an individual and really figuring out, okay, what is the best strategy for this kid?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, and one of the things that we were talking about, and I want to bring this up because like you and I had a beautiful discussion about magic moments, is how do we capture them? And, I was just talking to a parent I was coaching yesterday, actually. And I said, how many magic moments did you have this past year with your child? And she was like, oh, I had so many. I had so many magic moments. I'm like, oh, well, would you like to share some with me? She goes, well, I don't know so many specifically, but I know that we had a lot. And so I offered her an opportunity. There's a couple ways that I told her to capture this. Number one, you can keep a calendar, and every day I said, I invite you every day on your calendar to write one magic moment you had with yourself, with your child. Imagine when you get to December 31st, 2023, and you look back at that calendar and you save every month that you had, and you were able to go through every day of this year, what would that feel like to really know what you captured and what you did with your children and what were the magic moments? And she was like, oh my gosh, I think it would change almost everything. It would probably change the way I see things. It'd probably give me more appreciation. It would give me more gratitude. It would make me actually probably see what my purpose was in that year. And I say, how about that? And so, and I invited her to do that. And that's what she started to do. I mean, because yesterday was only the second, so it was a great day to start it, right? And I said another thing that I have done with some of my families that I've worked with over the years is they get a jar and they get those pretty little sticky notes that you were just talking about, right? And they write down, every person in the family writes down a magic moment they had and they put it in that
Just
jar.
Vino, just to before, I love the jar idea and I want to hear more about it. Just a question in between, because maybe not everybody is familiar to what a magic moment is. What is a magic moment to you?
Huh.
What does it mean?
A magic moment. What a great question. A magic moment to me is something that lit me up, something that lit me up that day. It could be anything from me walking downstairs and seeing my son do the dishes with nobody asking him to do it. And me saying, what are you doing? He's like, well, I saw that there was dishes in the sink and, dad always does them. So I wanted to do them for daddy. That is a magic moment to me. Sometimes it's laying down at the end of the day with my twins and just, doing our gratitude. That could be a magic moment to me. Finding anything in my day that lights me up. Having my client make a breakthrough on a coaching call with me is a magic moment. What do you
And
describe magic moments as?
I love that, because that makes it easy. That makes it easy to experience a magic moment every day. Because if you, for example, have a rule as a person that, oh, a magic moment that is only if I go to Disney World, and if at Disney World we somehow win the lottery and we get like the fast track on every attraction and a VIP ticket because we were just lucky. And and then if Mickey Mouse greets us and actually has lunch with us and brings and serves a birthday cake, that might be a magic moment. If this is your rule for a magic moment, it's going to be quite hard to actually fill your 365 days with magic moments.
Right.
For me, a magic moment is a moment that makes me go to bed with a smile, or makes me wake up with a grin, or to a moment that I can tell my grandkids about. So everything in the future, I don't have grandkids yet, but like just in the future, that where I think this is a moment that I can value and treasure with me all my life. Because I believe at the end of our lives, we're not going to remember everything, but we're going to remember certain moments, certain magic moments that actually made our life better. And before I want to tell more about it, but I want to hear about the jars.
So the jars. So I think that was great, Ronnie. Thank you for that. I do take for granted that everybody knows what a magic moment is. So everybody can define a magic moment the way they need to, right? It doesn't have to be big. It could be something small. Just figuring out what is it. I like what you said, you can go to bed with a smile on your face and remember it, or something that you could tell your grandkids about, or something that just lights you up in that moment. And so the calendar is one strategy, and the jars is the other strategy. Is that even having your kids start to practice writing down magic moments in their day and putting it in a jar, and then on December 31st, 2023, pulling out that jar and starting to pull out and remember as a family the different moments that each of us had is another way to reflect on a year, because reflection isn't just what did I do wrong, or, what could I have done better, or what do I want the next year to be because I didn't do it this year. Sometimes reflection is really reflecting on what was great in that year. What were those magic moments this year? What did we share as a family? What did we share individually? And that's just it. Like, this is not just about your kids. This is about you as an individual. We have different identities that we wear. I have an identity of a mom, a wife, a coach, a mentor, a friend, a daughter. Sometimes we get so caught up in certain identities that we forget the rest of them. And by forgetting the rest of them, you're forgetting the rest of you. And so it's acknowledging even those little moments for your own self. Maybe a magic moment. I'm going to tell you my magic moment for the last year of 2022. It was my recharge day, staying in my pajamas and just doing absolutely nothing. And that was my magic moment the last day of 2022, because I took time for me to recharge my battery to enter into the next year of 2023. And I'm going to tell you, that was literally my magic moment of that day. And I had a lot to do that day. I had so much work I could have gotten done, maybe find some things to complete 2022 with. And I decided that no, that the person that I needed to be in that moment was just me. It wasn't a mom. It wasn't a wife. It wasn't a coach. It was just me getting back to me and realizing what I needed. And that is so important. And I get to model this for my kids. And my kids tell me all the time, when I see them in their pajamas, like, I'm having a recharge day, and I don't get on them for it. I actually praise them for it. That at how many of us as kids ever got praised for taking a day for ourselves? How this is going to reflect in her adulthood. Because that's what I want it to do. Because that to me is another magic moment when we can take that time for ourselves to really appreciate that in ourselves and to pass it on to our children.
It's beautiful. And I would like to pick the ball up here, and basically, because my job in entertainment is all about creating an emotional journey, taking people on an emotional journey, like taking them from where they are to where I would love them to be, like creating those emotional experiences, creating magic moments. And oftentimes when I talk with people, it's like, well, okay, I mean, I get it. Magic moments, beautiful, I love it. And I love to experience them, but how do you create them? Like, how does it work? And, I mean, you're married, Mino. And so when you get married, and this is always a great example, because usually before two people get married, one of them needs to ask, needs to propose. Yeah. So usually, and then when the person who proposes, oftentimes it's a man, but I mean, it can be a woman, it can be, and maybe is no man in a relationship. So whatever it is, yeah. And so one of the two is going to do it. And the person who proposes is going to ask themselves ahead of time many questions. First of all, the first question that the person needs to answer is, who am I going to ask? But I guess by that point, you actually have figured out that part. And so you already know who you're going to propose to. But then the next thing is about, okay, what does this person like? What experiences does this person like? What is it that, like, where do I want to propose? How is the location going to be? Should it be outdoors, indoors, with other people, or just by ourselves? Should it be with the sunset or the sundown, or should it be with some music? What kind of music? Do I want to have somebody capturing the moment, or do I want to capture it by myself? You're going to ask yourself all those kind of questions. Is it going to be a short one? Is it going to be something where you are actually going to going there and making a poem potentially, or maybe it's going to be some kind of a treasure hunt or something. It can be a scavenger hunt. It can be all kinds of things. And so basically, because at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to create a magic moment. You want to create an emotional experience for the other person. And to be honest, I do not know anybody who is married or who has ever been married. When you ask them, do you remember, or how was your wedding or marriage proposal? I never heard the answer, I don't remember that. I don't know. Do you?
I remember mine.
Of course. Do you know anybody who does not remember that? Absolutely. I do not.
No, I
Because
don't.
it's highly emotional, and do not expect that every magic moment that you want to create is going to have the same emotional intensity, because it's not.
Right.
And you still can take the concept. This can be for people that you love, that you care about. It can be at work, but especially and beautifully, it can be also with your family and with your kids. Because the better you know somebody, the better you know what this person loves and likes,
Right.
and the easier it gets for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they become some of the biggest magic moments, you know. Um, I want to kind of like circle back around though, because I think that what is important for our listeners to also understand is that sometimes the mistakes that our kids make end up being a magic moment as well. You know, it's how we define things. You know, we can define it as a catastrophic problem and get upset with them and be angry with them. And how is that going to solve it? But when we take the time to see the gift in it and have that moment to resolve it, what an opportunity to connect with your child, to let them know that, hey, I'm here and I'm going to be with you and I've got your back and I'm going to do this with you and we're going to resolve this together. Just that can be a magic moment. When that moment that you come together with your child to resolve something, to see the gift in the choice that they made, that they felt it was a mistake. I see your head turning. Your thoughts
Yeah,
turning.
actually, because I was just thinking about something with the mistakes again. Um, when I grew up, a friend of mine, he was, or he is the same age as I am, and when he was 4 years old, he had a 2-year-old brother who died, who drowned in a lake because we were living close to a lake, and it was just him and his, like, he was a 4-year-old and the other one was 2-year-old, and they were the only two at the lake, and then the 2-year-old drowned, and the parents were incredibly, of course, hurt, painful, but also upset with him, with the 4-year-old. And basically, for the rest of his upbringing, they let him feel his mistake. Or they said it was his mistake, that he was the one who actually was supposed to take care of the 2-year-old as a 4-year-old kid. And as painful as sometimes something may feel, blaming your kids, or don't make blaming your kids an excuse for something that you need to take responsibility for yourself.
Nice.
And
So true.
that's really, really something, because I mean, let's be honest, a 4-year-old kid is not the right person to take care of a 2-year-old kid,
Right.
and especially not close, like next to a lake. It's when, so this is really something that where I believe it's important as a family to also embrace you as a family, and also when things like, and this is a very tragic event, and not always, most of the times, thank God you're not going to have this experience. But even if you had, this can make or break a family, and it's
Yeah.
up to you that you see that it makes your family and doesn't break it.
Nice. That is so true. And, you know, I can think of, you know, many scenarios where parents have done that, you know, where we, you know, maybe, I mean, I can't think of off the top of my head, but even, you know, where have I put blame where as the adult, as the parent, I need to take ownership for it, you know? And it's remembering also that our kids, and because you said 4 years old, it's like, how big is the brain of a 4 year old? Like, what's really going on in that 4 year old brain to even have the capacity to take care of a 2 year old, right? Like, it's just, we got to think of brain development too. And I'm constantly saying things because sometimes our kids act more mature than their age. Sometimes our kids perceive that they understand more than they should for their age. And I'm here to tell you, it doesn't matter what we perceive our kids to know or not know. Their brain development is all the same at that age. Like it's a 10-year-old brain's a 10-year-old brain. to think that they need to take on bigger responsibility and then to get mad at them when they're not. We as the parent have to realize, how old are they? What really is in their capacity of knowing what's right and wrong and long-term consequences, especially when their frontal lobe's not developed until they're fully an adult. And for boys, it's 28, and for girls, it's 25. It's I can't believe, like, a 4-year-old, and what he must have had grown up under, with that feeling like, I did this. It was my fault at 4. I should have known better. When we can see now as adults that at 4, they wouldn't have known better. They probably knew better at that moment, like, oh my gosh, what happened? I should have done something. But that's it. That's it, you know?
And everybody that has ever played a team sports knows exactly that the leader of the team is responsible, like takes the responsibility. Or also, of course, in a company, if you're the leader of a company, ultimately you are the one who is responsible for it, because you are the one who trained that person, who like whatever it is, you need to take responsibility for it. And especially when with a kid, you were the person. I mean, you need to take responsibility for it at the end. And I believe that the biggest reason why parents sometimes get mad at their kids is because they do not want to feel the responsibility, because they want to give the responsibility away to the kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, some of the things that I feel that would be important for our listeners to hear is, number one, how do they, and I'm just curious from your perspective, how do they start to formulate that relationship with their kids where their kids don't feel shamed or blamed for the mistakes they made, and actually can help them find the gift in it?
I believe the first thing, actually, what you need to embrace is the growth. Embrace the process, and not just a single. Don't focus on a single mistake. Focus on the process, and encourage them. I mean, we oftentimes talk about that. There's this great example that we both also know from Tony Robbins, that he oftentimes gives, is when your kid begins to walk. Yeah, and your kid is trying his first steps, and you stand him up, and he's making his first steps, and then he falls down. How often do you pick your kid up again in order to give them the opportunity to walk? Of
Every time.
course, you're going to do this as often as it takes, because I've never seen a parent who's like, he's not a walker. Like, yeah, he doesn't do that. Like, no way. You're not.
Or you're not yelling at them going, why aren't you walking? Why did you fall? You shouldn't have fallen. You should walk already.
Exactly. I mean, really, the kid does. Of course, you're not going to do that. and you're just going to go there and like, hey, okay, all right, let's embrace the process. And especially for those of us, and I count myself there as well, who are sometimes not the most patient person, it's really about learning gratitude.
Yes.
Gratitude for what is, gratitude for the process, gratitude for being able to have this family. So asking yourself, what's great about this? What is it that I can learn from this? What is it that I can be grateful for in this moment? Because the moment you change your focus, the moment you appreciate what you have, it's going to be very different. It's, I mean, for whatever reason, that I a few months ago, I saw a headline in a newspaper. 2-year-old boy tried to cook, house burnt down. That was the headline. I can imagine that the parents were not very happy about that. And at the same time, Jesus, if your 2-year-old kid is cooking alone in the kitchen, you got to ask yourself as a parent, what could I have done better?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I love that. metaphor, if you would, of the child learning to walk, just to even take it one step further, is that when that child takes that first step and they fall, we get excited. We get excited that they even got up. We get excited that they took that first step. We get excited that they fell, and then we put them back up, right? And then we get them back up, and we're even more excited. And it's our excitement that gets them back up. It's our excitement that makes them want to do it again and again and again. And next thing you know, our kid's walking. And what if we were able as parents to use that same metaphor with all the mistakes that they made? What could we get excited about? And going into the gratitude, I had a guest a couple weeks ago, one of our friends, actually, Tony Rodriguez, and he came up with like 3 questions that really altered something for me. And it was, what am I grateful for now? What could I be grateful for? And what should I be grateful for? Just putting those different questions around gratitude not only helped me to see areas when I couldn't see gratitude, but it helped, even because I've been telling my clients this and coaching them on this, is that with these kids, when they're like, the ones that are quote unquote depressed or feeling bad, and I'm like, well, what if you went into gratitude? Well, I'm not grateful for anything. The moment I said, well, what could you be grateful for? Boom, all of a sudden, they're finding something. And then when I say, well, what should you be grateful for? Now all of a sudden, they're finding things they're grateful for. It just puts it in a different perspective. And I love that you brought this into the show. It seems like every show we talk about gratitude, but I'm going to tell you, gratitude is the way to pull anyone out of, even yourself, your kids, out of a slump, out of a way of feeling bad or sad or miserable. What could you be grateful for in that mistake that they made? What became of it, or what could become of it because of the mistake they made? And it's just, again, creating that open, safe, and trusting space for your child to be able to come to you and speak to you about these mistakes. So I absolutely love that. It's the growth, right? It's the process, as you were saying, the process of finding that.
And I want to give you a different tool here. When you're watching right now and you're thinking, well, what can I do when my kid does something that does not provoke the best reaction inside of me, or that maybe wants me to go berserk or whatever? So there are 3 decisions that you can take, that we ultimately make in any moment. But you can also consciously do that. And so ask yourself, first, what do I focus on? What do I focus on in that moment? And if you consciously do that, you can focus on something else. Are you focused on something, on a mistake, on something that went wrong, or on something that actually is right? So really, what do you focus on? That's the very first thing. And it can be something also internally, it can be externally. And there are a million things that you can focus on in any moment. The second thing is, what does it mean? What does it actually mean? Because we as human beings have the possibility to give it a meaning. You can choose what it means. So what do you focus on? What does it mean? And next up, what am I going to do about it? What am I going to do because of that? Because of what I focus on and what it means? What action am I going to take? And when you really go through the process, the next time that you are upset, the next time that you want to punish your kid for something, the next time that you want to blame your kid for a mistake that maybe you did yourself, think about it. Those 3 things. What do I focus on? What do I need to focus on? What does it mean? And what am I going to do about it?
That is amazing. And I would just put a little caveat, because a lot of parents, you might be listening to this and saying, I already know my kid's going to be like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So let me tell you, when your kid says, I don't know, just change that. What could you do? You know, what are you focused on? What does it mean? And what could you do? What
I
could you
was
do?
actually talking to the parents.
Yes, to parents, what are you going to do? And I think this is great for kids,
It
right?
is.
Like, what a great strategy, a 3-process strategy for your kids. And to just tell them, like, what do you focus on? Like, as soon as you were talking about this, Ronnie, I went to my son Samuel, who plays soccer. You know, when I see these kids on this field, and the minute they miss the shot that they took, or the minute that the ball got, the other team got the ball away from them, you see their physiology just change. It just kind of goes, ugh, you know? And one of the things that I've been teaching my son and my husband too is like, don't focus on that moment of missing it. Focus on what do you need to do differently? What could you do differently now? Like, think of like in the future, because you can't go back and change the fact that you didn't block the goal. They already got the goal. You can't take it away from them. But what you can do is not focus on the fact that they got the goal. You could focus on what do you need to do differently going forward. And this changes his mindset. It's really about changing the mindset. You know, when they're losing the first half of the game and they got halftime, it's what's the talk the coach is giving to them? Are they focused on what they did wrong? Or are they going to focus on what they need to do differently? Because it's really about that, and I know you are, big on sports. You were the what's your title for sports that you
You mean like a stadium announcer, ring
yes,
announcer, all those kind of
yes,
things?
yes, yeah. So you get to see all the sports. You get to, and I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. It's even the best people are the best athletes that I see is that they're really focused on not the mistake, but what they're doing right. Like, I even have a client that he's like a 17-year-old. He's an amazing golfer. And I even told him, I'm like, take a book out with you. And those days that you feel you're messing up, you're making a mistake, I don't want you to write down the mistake. I want you to write down in that moment, what was great? Was it your hand motion? Was it your feet motion? Was it your swing? Was it your balance? I said, I don't know anything about golf, but I'm assuming that there's processes and how things are when it all align, you get the right shot. He's like, yeah. I said, so instead of beating yourself up for doing bad or making a mistake, what if you started to recognize what was great about that shot you took in that moment? And he's like, oh my gosh. And I was telling my husband about this. He's like, do you know that's how Tiger Woods got to be so great? He started writing down what was great about the shots that he was taking. So he started to focus on the greatness of it, not the mistakes of it.
Beautiful.
So it goes into, exactly what you were saying with that focus, meaning, and what are you going to do? So we have literally 2 minutes left, Ronnie. So if you wanted to drop some words of wisdom to the listeners, what would you want to share with them to really just take this home and tie it home about the mistakes that we make in our lives?
First of all, don't be too hard on yourselves. Because, and once again, it's not about the standards. It's great to have great standards. And it's totally normal and human to make mistakes from time to time. It's okay. Just clean yourself up, get up again, move on. Don't blame it on somebody else. Don't blame it on the kids. Take responsibility and just own it and move on.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Ronnie, for your time that you've spent with us. So much
Thank
wisdom
you.
you've shared with the listeners that I know for myself, I've taken a lot of this in too, that I'm going to start taking action on as well. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you find value in this conversation here on our show, please join our Redefine Parenting group on Facebook for even more tips and conversations. Do someone you know a favor and share my group with them as well, so they too can hear what they need to in order for them to feel supported in their parenting journey. It takes a village for all of us to come together as parents. You can get more information about me on www.benewinspires.com. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.